It's just kind of gonna. Here we are. All right, hello and welcome to episode 171 of the Rollo and Slappy Show. Today is November 18th, 2019. I am Rollo McFlugel, and with me is Slappy Jones 2, and we are both from McFlugel.com. The show notes page for this episode is McFlugel.com/171, where you'll be able to find links to things like our sponsor, LibertyMugs.com, and also ways to check out the project that we're going to talk about right now with the two guests that we have. First ever father-son guest that we've had on the show. So why don't you take it over, Slappy, and introduce him?
Yeah, so welcome back, JW, who's been a guest of our show a few times and has been, I don't know the right word, I guess he's taught me more about Bitcoin than anyone else, so I appreciate that. But we have JW and his son, Will Weatherman. So, Will, welcome to the show for the first time. And today, Will is going to be telling us about the project he's working on, an open source project for cold storage of Bitcoin. So, Will, what's your website? What are you working on? Can you tell us a little bit about someone like me who doesn't know a whole lot? Explain it to me what you're working on.
Cool. So Yeti Cold is cold storage for Bitcoin, which is just a UI built over Bitcoin Core. So we haven't written any Bitcoin code at all. We've just used Bitcoin Core's code and built a web wizard over it.
All right, so I told you I'm gonna ask a lot of really basic questions. When you say UI, what do you mean by that?
I wrote the code. JW helped test it, and he was the one that researched most of the Bitcoin Core or Bitcoin code. And
so like I say, I'm very computer illiterate. So basically, you created a program that works with Bitcoin Core.
Yes, and works on top of it.
Sure. So you download the entire chain through Bitcoin Core, and this runs on top of it?
Yep.
So user interface, UI stands for user interface.
Gotcha. So that's what I'm looking at. When I open up a program, the UI is the user interface, what I'm seeing that connects it to Bitcoin Core or whatever, or runs in conjunction with Bitcoin Core.
Right. Yep.
Yep, exactly.
Cool.
And the reason that we did that is that Bitcoin Core is the most trustworthy software that you can use, but it's not the most user-friendly. So we thought we'll just create a very thin veneer over the top of
it. So just a question on that, because I have downloaded Bitcoin Core. You're saying just that interface, when I open up Bitcoin Core, what I'm looking at there, it's just not very user-friendly, or downloading the whole chain, or what are you adding to it, I guess, is what I'm saying.
So Bitcoin Core is not very user-friendly in general, but you can send money and receive money through Bitcoin Core. There is no UI or user interface for setting up multi-sig or any of the complicated stuff that makes these wallets really secure in Yeti Cold.
So yeah, I would have no idea how to do that in Bitcoin Core.
Yeah.
And your program. Yeah, go ahead, Rob.
No, I think that what you're thinking of when you open up Bitcoin Core is like the wallet face.
Yep. Yeah, exactly.
So whereas what people want to do anything more complicated is you got to go on the command line.
Sure.
Right.
I don't even know what that's capable of. I have used the command line before, but it's always from like, how do I don't know, get my private keys or whatever. I go on the command line and get them.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. So what's something that we did, Will, or maybe you could explain what multi-sig is and
that'd be great.
So multi-sig is where you have multiple wallet seeds and requires you to have at least X number of the entire pool to send your money. That number is configurable. Yeti Cold currently uses a 3 of 7, where it requires you to have 3 of your 7 seeds that you write down. And those are in WIP format. I'm not sure how to explain WIP PGP format any better, though.
That's okay.
Yeah, it's just a bunch of letters and numbers, and so you'll see this big string of letters and numbers. But
that's instead of the like the seed words.
Right, instead of the dictionary of words that you have to do just to get your seed.
So why did you guys pick 3 of 7? What was special about that configuration?
It has a lot of redundancy, and the fact that it requires you to have 3 of your 7 places compromised before you can send the money. But this is great if you have 1 at your house, 1 in your backyard, and then 1 an hour drives away. Even if your house is completely searched and both of them are found, you still have the 1 an hour drive away, and you can double that setup in another country and have 1 in a safety deposit. So a ton of redundancy, but still requires you to have lots of options for security.
Okay. Yeah, great. So I should have asked this question first. So why multi-sig instead of just having the single key? Because
I'm not sure. You're gonna have to talk to JW for that one.
Okay.
Okay. So let me ask it this way, Will. If you had a bunch of money in Bitcoin, why would you use multi-sig instead of just have a single seed?
It's definitely less secure. The single seed. Because, well, I guess if you put it this way, if you have a piece of paper with your seed on it, you can hide your seed somewhere, but if that one place is compromised, then all of your money's gone. Even if you split the seed words up, you don't have a lot of options for splitting your seed up. The best you could do is like a 2 of 3, but that severely compromises your security.
Mm-hmm. So when you say split it up, you mean just like, if you had like 50 words, you could break it up into 3 different chunks. So you'd have 17 words per piece of paper. Is that what you mean?
Yes. But then instead of having 50 words to guess for each piece of paper, you have only 17 per each piece of paper. And then if you want to give it the redundancy that we have with a 3 of 7, you're going down to maybe 8 words per piece of paper, and that is guessable with computers now.
Right. Okay. That makes a lot of sense. So I guess because our podcast audience is very varied in knowledge and understanding of Bitcoin. There's people that know pretty good amount about it, a lot more than me, I would say. And then there's also people that kind of just know about it, but they get real confused or they're interested in it, but they don't know how to get started. So why would someone want to use cold storage, or what's the difference between cold storage and like having a hot wallet? Can you talk about the differences there? And
one thing
because I do want to talk about the actual Yeti Cold product, but just like kind of explaining the background of, all right, you have Bitcoin. Why would you want to put it in cold storage versus having like a hot wallet or something?
Or just, someone who just gets into Bitcoin and has Cash App and buys some Bitcoin and has it on there.
Security is the main thing. If you have $1,000 or even $5,000 in a hot wallet, worst case scenario is somebody finds your seed written down in your safe or buried in the backyard, and they can use that to get all of your money. Now, another option would be have 7 different wallets and then just split up your money between that wallets. But then if you have a transaction that requires multiple wallets, you have to get those wallets, restore those wallets, and that is another option. It's just not what we decided to go with. Multi-sig is definitely easier and more convenient and just as secure.
Okay. So go ahead.
I was just going to say the reason that you would want to. So what about Cash App? Like, if you buy Bitcoin on Cash App, well, why not just leave it on there?
I don't know much about Cash App, but I'm assuming that you don't write down any seed words, and that's all stored somewhere.
That's right. Yeah.
You don't even have the keys. You have. I mean, maybe you can. I don't know. But
I don't think you do.
Yeah, it'd be you don't use Cash App, but it's like Coinbase or any other Bitcoin exchange where
Does
they
it
just
have a
hold.
user and password?
It does, yeah. It has a username and password, and that's all. But the main problem is that you're trusting them not to steal your Bitcoin, and you hear about these exchanges that go out of business and take all the Bitcoin and run off with it. So you don't want to have somebody. Basically, you're trusting them to hold all of your private keys for you, and if they decide they want to steal your Bitcoin, then they can, right?
More importantly, yours and everybody else that uses it, and that can be enticing to get the Bitcoin.
Yeah,
Oh yeah,
exactly.
Or they can start kind of selling you fake Bitcoin because you don't have the you can't verify that the Bitcoin's real, so they can just really it's just everyone's user account is just a database. It's just their own database, so they can claim that they're giving you Bitcoin until maybe something like a bank run type thing happens and everyone tries to claim their Bitcoin and they go, oh, we don't have all of it, and
Yep.
cause a major problem. So who is Yeti Cold? Like, who should be using it? Like, what type of person in Bitcoin? Why would someone want to use it? Like, what's the purpose of it for someone? Because it doesn't seem like it's for someone that it's their kind of. I don't necessarily agree with this strategy, but like they're spending money. It's not for someone like that, right?
Yeti Cold, specifically the cold storage, is for anybody that has a large amount of Bitcoin, $50,000 plus, and they just want to store that and keep it in basically cold storage. They don't want to spend it. They don't want to use it. They can occasionally send money to it to add to their pile. It's just basically your hoard that you keep hidden away and safe.
Okay, great. So like your own personal bank vault.
Right.
Yeah, and just again, another very basic question, but when you say cold storage as opposed to hot wallets, or I'm on your site here, I see Yeti warm storage. When you say cold, that means no one can get to your private keys because it's not connected to the internet.
Right. It's impossible for it to get it. Well, not impossible. Would be extremely difficult for anybody to, if you use generic hardware, to have some way of connecting either by Wi-Fi or hacking the QR codes to send all of your private keys out of the offline machine or disconnected machine.
Right.
All right, I'm glad.
Yeah, and just to clarify real quick, so there is 3 different versions, and Will, you should talk through kind of the pros and cons, like when you would use each. But cold storage specifically means that in our case, not only are your keys, which are basically your Bitcoin password, right? For people that aren't into Bitcoin, your keys are not. They're not only not on an internet connected device, but they're not on any electronic device at all. Like at the end of Yeti cold storage setup, you have some thumb drives and you have some paper, and you split those up and move them, at different spots. And so it's absolutely impossible to guess what's on those pieces of paper without having access to those pieces of paper. So that's cold storage. But Will, you should talk through the kind of the pros and cons of the other 2 options.
Real quick, the cons of Yeti Cold is that it's not easy to send money out of a multi-sig, especially if you plan to have it be your cold storage where you've got your keys an hour drives away and then a 3-hour flight across the country just to send money out of it for your grocery shop or anything else that is not long term. That would be Yeti warm or Yeti hot.
And what's Yeti warm? How is it different?
Yeti warm is a 3 of 7 multi-sig. It is easier to set up and recover, but it can be used for cold storage. But that being said, your keys are on an online connected device or Wi-Fi connected device, and therefore can pretty much easily be compromised if they somehow maybe add an extra library into the QR code library we're doing, or maybe the QR code library themselves are compromised. There are a lot easier ways to get into Yeti warm as opposed to Yeti cold, but it still is a 3 of 7 multi-sig.
Right. And so you can easily send from it because it's online. It's just a matter of, clicking send and then you can send Bitcoin. So it's really convenient, but it'd be hard to lose your Bitcoin because of the multi-sig. What about Yeti Hot?
Yeti Hot is just one seed. So it's basically a hot wallet that uses the WIP format for your seed, converted to NATO format, which is basically just Alpha Bravo Echo instead of ABE. And then you write that down on a piece of paper or three, maybe a thumb drive or two. But that is used for easy spending. All you have to do is plug in your seed or write or type it in, and then you can easily send and receive from the Bitcoin QT wallet.
Yeah, so that basically the idea is that as you go from cold, which is really secure, to hot, it's less secure at each step, but it's also a lot easier. So, if you have $500, just throw it in Yeti Hot and be done with it, because it'll only take you, 15 minutes, 10 minutes to set up. But if it's a large amount, you want to go with Yeti Cold, and then there's kind of an in-between option.
Yeah. So would it make sense, like say you had a million US dollars worth of Bitcoin, to go with all three? So you have some kind of saved away you're not going to touch. That's your cold storage. It's very hard to get to unless you absolutely needed it. And you have a little bit in the warm, which almost kind of like some savings just to have in case. And then the hot would be what you're spending on your daily basis or whatever. Does that make sense or not at all?
That does make sense because Yeti Cold, Yeti Warm, and Yeti Hot have specific uses. You are not going to want to drive an hour away and take a 3-hour flight just so you can spend some Bitcoin for your groceries. That would be definitely overkill Yeti Warm, or more easily Yeti Hot. And Yeti Warm would basically be the same thing. You put in maybe 7 grocery shopping trips into Yeti Warm as opposed to putting it all in Yeti Hot.
Yeah, I personally will have some in Yeti Warm just because I like the 3 of 7 thing, and then I'll use Yeti Cold. But I'm a security person, so I'm going to probably be a little bit more
avoiding
annoying.
a Yeti Hot.
Yeah, I mean, actually, it's not that. To put this in context, though, like it's not insecure to use Yeti Hot. You have Bitcoin Core; it's extremely tested and battle hardened. You put, even a few $1,000 in there and leave it online all the time. Like I would sleep like a baby. I wouldn't be worried about it at all. I wouldn't be comfortable with a few $1,000,000 in there, but a few $1,000 just on a laptop that's running a freshly installed copy of Ubuntu with, which is what Yeti has you do. It has you set up a laptop that just has Ubuntu on it fresh, and then it throws Bitcoin Core on there for you. I mean, that thing's pretty damn rock solid, right? Like it's very unlikely that you're going to get hacked. Like every web server is not that secure, right? They always have additional services and stuff that they're running. So like when you're talking security in Bitcoin, it's kind of like you're definitely like you've got the tinfoil hat on, and like you've already wrapped yourself in tinfoil, and you're in your Faraday cage and everything. So this is just fine for a few $1,000.
Yeah, it's funny that how we're talking about like the hot storage and saying that it's not that secure, but when you compare it to what I think most people do is just leave it on exchanges or use, they just go on Google Play or something and find the first Bitcoin wallet they see and put it on that. It's a whole nother league what we're talking about here. So.
Yeah, definitely. And, I mean, the other thing is you can compare it to the banking system, and people think that banks are secure because they're like, well, I've never lost any money out of there. But the only reason for that is that they lose money like crazy. They have the most inefficient security that you could possibly imagine. But the reason that you don't know that you're losing money is that they're just printing it like crazy. And it's such this big Ponzi scheme that they're willing to absorb the cost, right? Like they'll send out the FBI to go track some guy down over writing bad checks, equaling less than $10,000 over a couple of years, right? Like they'll spend $100,000 on an FBI agent to go out and do that. And you're thinking, it's not that bad when somebody writes me a bad check, it ends up being absorbed by my bank, sometimes. But it's just because the costs are all hidden, right?
Right.
So the reality is that this is it's so cheap, right? Like you go to Walmart, grab a laptop for $130, and you literally have like NSA level security that no government in the world can compromise, and it takes you 30 minutes to set up. That's pretty insane.
Yeah. I want to get into kind of the hardware stuff and everything. But before that, Will, you mentioned the NATO code for the private key, and you want to, because JW, you brought that up, I don't know, a couple months ago maybe, how you came up with that idea, and I think that's really good, because there's issues with the mnemonic seed that a lot of people are used to, those 12 or 24 words that you write down.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you want to get into explaining what some of the threats are with that, but can you explain what what your little trick that you did too with the private seed?
Yeah. So if you have a Bitcoin wallet, at some point they probably told you to write down 24 words. And that's this thing called BIP39. And when I first found out about it, I was pretty pissed off because I had put my Bitcoin into this. So anybody that was following on me on Twitter, I was probably overreacting a little bit because I felt a little bit betrayed. My feelings were hurt because I got suckered. But it turned out that a couple months ago I found out that this BIP39 thing was actually a bit controversial when it was implemented, and that's enough for me to freak out, because anything that's controversial and has to do with cryptography, like software security, it usually just sits on the shelf until it's not controversial anymore. That's the right way to do it. And so some of the concerns that I had some of the concerns that I had when I first found out about how controversial it was are definitely less of a concern now. I do think that there's enough randomness involved. And they're using some algorithms that are a little bit questionable that people have said is not quite right. But ultimately, I guess the main complaint that I have about that approach right now is that the biggest threat to your Bitcoin is recovery. If, in 10 years, you're trying to figure it out, or you die and your spouse is trying to figure out how to get at this Bitcoin, that's the most likely way that it goes away. Like an attacker, kicking in your front door and taking it, or somebody online, getting you to run a virus on your laptop and you having your Bitcoin on that. That's not assuming that you're not doing stuff that I would tell you is, psychotic. That's not the most likely way that you're going to lose your Bitcoin. It's going to be recovery. And so what this BIP39 idea is that we'll have these databases of for each language, we'll have a database of 4,000 or so words. And each one of those words corresponds to a number. And then you just have to write down these 24 words. And that equals this 256 letter / number thing, right? And the problem with that is that if that database ever goes away, like if anybody loses that database, you're not going to be able to recover your Bitcoin. And it's probably fine for English, but if you speak some obscure language, maybe it'll be fine. Like maybe your database won't be lost. But I'm not all that confident that, especially since there's a lot of people that don't, they quietly don't like BIP39. I'm not sure that it'll still be around in 20 years. And it's not in Bitcoin Core. And for me, that's kind of the standard, right? Like if it hasn't been adopted by Bitcoin Core yet, it's very possible it won't exist in 5 years, because everybody's, all these startups and stuff, they're trying stuff. But if it doesn't make it into the sort of the open source standard thing that everybody's doing code review and giving a lot of thought to and is being pretty conservative with, it could just go away. So that's the main reason I don't like it is the possibility that when you go to recover your Bitcoin, the database won't be there. The other big problem with it is something called derivation paths. And I won't get into that, but the way that different wallet companies are using this derivation path thing is so unpredictable that it's smart to write down what they're doing. And so now, instead of just having to know your seed words or your seed, right, this 256-bit number, supposedly to make it user-friendly, now you have to know these 24 words. You may or may not want to keep a copy of the word database. For paranoids like me, I would. And then you definitely want to write down this derivation path thing that's super not user-friendly. So at the end of the day, it just doesn't, I don't think that it really gives you anything, and it takes a lot away. So as I was looking at that, it's like, look, there's these 256 words, or these 256 letters or numbers. Why don't we just use, okay, so what's the problem with that, right? Why don't you just write down A, B, C, 7, 8, 9? And Will, actually, why didn't we do that? Why didn't we just write down the stinking numbers? There's only 256 of them, and you can be done with it.
256 is not very user-friendly to store and write down because there's no redundancy for it. If you accidentally make a typo, you are definitely not going to find a single misspelled letter in 256 characters.
Yeah, it's like finding an atom in the Earth,
Right.
a single atom in the entire Earth or something.
Yeah. And people came up with the NATO format a while ago, which is designed to specifically be easy to not misinterpret. You're not going to find another word in the dictionary, the 26 letters, that looks or is anything remotely like Alpha or Bravo or Echo. They're all completely new, unique, and have plenty of redundancy. You could chop the first letter off and still know exactly what word it was. So you have lots of redundancy to not forget 256 bits.
Right. So that was one thing. What was the other thing that you ended up adding to make it a little easier? Because there's a little bit more on it with the sort of modified NATO format that we went with.
The other thing we did is all capitals and lowercases are complete capital words. So capital Alpha and then lowercase alpha corresponds to capital A and lowercase a. Same thing, plenty of redundancy. You're not going to miss the first letters capitalized. We also turned all the numbers into words. Conveniently, none of the word letters look anything alike, so same redundancy. And then we just keep those all capitalized.
Yeah. And then is there like any sort of check to make sure that you're putting in these things correctly?
Yes, we do have a checksum which decodes them to their base 58 format, which is basically just the numbers, the direct 256 bits rather than the 13 words or whatever we have you write down. Mm-hmm. We add up all of the rows. So we have to take each 4 letters or 4 word segment. We add up the number and then we run some math on that to give you another word which you write down, which is your checksum, and chances of you getting the same checksum for 2 rows is so small, it's not worth coming up with another way to do it where it's impossible. So if you have your rows, or if you have your 13 4-letter or 4-word rows, there's an extra row for the checksum, which helps you figure out if you have a typo or if you accidentally wrote your word down wrong. And there are ways to recover your 4 words based on your checksum.
So even if you lost an entire word,
entire 4 words.
If you lost the entire 4 words, you think you could come up with the 4 missing words if you had the checksum?
If you had the checksum, you could reverse the math in a way that could give you, I'm not sure how many different ways, but not very many different combinations of the 4 words. I mean, it'd be a bit of work, but you could eventually recover an entire row from just your checksum.
Yeah, it's possible. So and that's only because there's another layer of redundancy. So the WIF format itself, like those 256 letters and numbers, they have a pretty decent checksum at the end. And then what we did, just because it's really frustrating when you put in, like, you'll know this if you've worked with Bitcoin, but you type in those 24 words and then it just says it fails, right? And you're like, ah, man, which word? And then you have to go through 24 words to figure out which one was wrong. And so what we did is we made it so that you type in 4 words and then there's a 5th word. And as soon as you type in that 5th word, it confirms that all 5 words are good. So you have basically 13 sentences that you type in. And if you mess up any sentence, it tells you right away. So you can fix it as you go.
Yeah, that's a really, really major improvement on user friendliness and just having confidence that you're, because we've all written down seed words and private keys, and it's it can be nerve wracking. So doing that, it's a huge deal, because even if you mess up a letter, if you write lime instead of lima.
Yeah.
It's pretty obvious what you're not going to mess that up putting your private key in.
Yeah, totally. One of the features that we haven't built in that will make it even more user friendly is autocomplete. And because we have basically a very small word database, it's just the number of 26 letters. So there's a word that goes with every letter, and then there's an uppercase and a lowercase. That issue of losing the word database totally goes away, so you don't have to worry about that for recovery. But the other nice thing about that is because there's so few words in our word dictionary, if you type AL and then hit tab, we know it's alpha, right? Like if you type capital AL and then tab, so you can actually end up typing less keys to get this these 13 sentences in than you would with the 24 words. So you get I think this is one of those few cases where you get user friendliness and sort of redundancy and security without really having a downside. I guess the only downside is it just looks like more stuff on a page. And when you do write it down, it's more stuff to write down. But when you type it in, it's a lot less. So I think that's a pretty good trade-off.
Yeah. It's kind of like the who was the economist that said the more convoluted way is better for production. So putting in the upfront time and energy pays off in the end.
Yeah. And we don't have that autocomplete feature built yet. It's on the list though. But the design allows for it. So
Yeah, and it's also good just using the very generic standard of the NATO alphabet, as opposed to relying on something that was developed specifically for Bitcoin that may or may not go away, like you were saying with the BIP39 stuff. So.
Right. And it's an international standard, right? So it's alpha is not an English word. It's not a French word. It's not a German word. It's basically a made up word that makes sense for redundancy. The English or languages in themselves are really interesting. They're all of the words that we're speaking to each other right now. I can't remember what the number is, but it's I think it's 78% redundancy. So if you, in theory, if you were a computer and you only heard 78% of the sounds that I'm making right now, you could figure out exactly what I'm saying. And that applies across all human languages. It's all just about 78%, which is just fascinating. But these words are not words in any particular language, but they do have a lot of redundancy built into them. Like Will was saying, if you see AL, there's no other word that starts with AL, so you know that you're talking about the letter A, or the word alpha, which represents the letter A. So, so it is nice from we don't have to build a different version for every language perspective, because these you could say, oh well, the Chinese are not using the letter A, but they are, because the Phoenician alphabet is used in all computer science, right? So all developers in China and India and everywhere else are very comfortable with these letters and numbers.
Sure. So this kind of brings up another good thing to jump into, kind of the hardware setup with things, and why generic equipment and hardware like the generic NATO alphabet you're using, why that's a good thing, and talking through what you actually need hardware wise and why you chose this setup.
We chose this setup and the generic software because if you buy something specific for Bitcoin software like a Ledger or Trezor wallet, if anybody comes into your house and sees one of those USB sticks with their name engraved on it, you're going to know that's Bitcoin, and that there's probably a good chance that there's Bitcoin on that. But if you just see an old laptop under some books in a closet, nobody's going to think twice about that, saying that there's a Bitcoin seed on there or whatever. You might think there's some old docs, but yeah.
And what about like the manufacturing process? Any threats with like a Bitcoin specialized hardware that way?
Yes, there is a big security flaw with specialized hardware where if that company's compromised, or even one of the employees that is putting an extra chip in, could severely compromise your entire security flow of your, yeah.
Or even somebody that works in like, FedEx, if they know that maybe they're I don't know if the boxes are always identifiable, or presumably the guy that picks up stuff at the Trezor warehouse or whatever knows that it's Trezor that he's picking stuff up for, so he could swap out hardware. And you end up with a device that's compromised. Why don't you have to worry about that so much with laptops? Like, why wouldn't you have to worry if everybody compromises like every HP laptop in order to steal your Bitcoin? Well,
compromising every HP laptop or any laptop that has the ability to run Ubuntu on it is so uncost efficient that or effective that it would not be worth it to compromise every Linux-based laptop just to steal the Bitcoin out of them. Because even if you had all the Bitcoin, nobody would use it.
So and that's because a lot of people would buy laptops and not put Bitcoin on it, and you've gone through all this work and expense to compromise it. So you'd have to, is that what you're saying? You'd have to compromise so many, like maybe 10,000 laptops for every sucker that you got some Bitcoin out of.
Right. Yep.
Yeah, as opposed to if someone's buying a Ledger or Trezor or anything, they, like you said, they know exactly what that's being used for. So what exactly is the setup with the hardware? Like, what do you need to run the Yeti Cold?
So Yeti Cold specifically requires a 2 laptop setup, an online and a disconnected laptop. The online is for downloading the specific software that we require, including Bitcoin Core, downloading the blockchain, and then broadcasting and receiving the transactions. So that the disconnected laptop can use them. In order for us to get data from the online to the offline, we're using QR codes, which is super easy to cross-check. You just install any QR code app and scan the data, and no private keys should show up or any extra data except what we specifically need.
So what's the importance of using the QR codes?
QR codes are just simple ways to transfer, like maybe a balance or some recipient address, or even UTXO, an unspent transaction that you need. They're just super simple ways to send data from one spot to another spot with a reader and a scanner, or displaying. Yeah.
So why didn't we just run a cable, between the online and the offline laptop? Because a lot of the hardware wallets do that. They either use a USB cable, or another thing we could have done is just used a SD card. That's another popular thing hardware wallets do, and just pop it out and pop it into the own.
Because then your private keys, which were originally on the laptop, which is now in the SD drive, is being connected manually to the offline, which could be compromised reading the private key data after it's being sent from the offline. So you could end up with a compromised offline for some reason. And then you have this weak point where your SD card could have some extra data on it.
So are you saying that like even if the offline laptop had a virus on it, you're still not going to lose any Bitcoin?
Right. What you'd have to do is you'd have to add extra data to the QR code, like maybe put a key in each QR code we send over, and then read that from the online and then send it up. But you can easily check that by just scanning the QR code and seeing exactly what it has encoded. It's only a couple of, no more than maybe 300 characters per QR code that we send. So it's super easy to check if we have the required data.
Okay, great. I forget what I was just about to say.
So what other hardware do you need? You've got 2 laptops. What else do you need?
We require a USB drive for installing Ubuntu on them, and that could have a virus on it compromising both your online and offline. But again, the offline never connects to any smart electronic device at all. Only uses QR codes. The other thing we require is some USB drives for USB backups, but again, those never touch an online Wi-Fi enabled laptop or device. The only way it could be compromised from there is if you have a compromised USB drive. But again, if it was generic, it's not going to have it unless you compromised every single USB drive for a long time. You'd have to wait. It's not cost efficient.
So just to read that back to you, you've got 2 laptops, you've got 7 thumb drives for your private keys, and then you need a thumb drive for Ubuntu, and then you need a big external hard drive, right?
Right. You need a big external hard drive for copying stuff like the blockchain over some of the libraries require, but that's all done before your private keys ever get on the laptop.
How much would it cost to get all that stuff together?
I'm not sure.
Okay, fair enough. I didn't make you buy it. I should have. So I'll answer my own question. So the laptops, if you have a laptop, it probably would work just fine, and you can just use that laptop. You're going to have to back it up and then like fully erase it and then restore your stuff after you're done. So it's a little bit of a hassle if you use your own laptop and it has data on it. But you can use any laptop basically. But if you wanted to buy it all fresh, like if you just didn't even own a thumb drive, it costs you maybe $120, $130 per laptop. So that's $260. The external hard drive might be another $70. So that's 300 and what is that? 330. And then the thumb drives is like, $10. So you're maybe looking at a total investment of $340. But after you're done, then you have all this stuff and you can use it for other things too. Normally you would leave one laptop on and running just to watch your balance, and then maybe to use it for like some petty cash stuff, because you can use that one laptop both for Yeti cold and like Yeti warm or Yeti hot. But yeah, it's maybe $350 worth of stuff if you just don't own a computer at all right now.
And that's $340 to protect a serious amount of money.
Right.
Certainly cheaper than, I don't know, paying armed guards to protect your gold or your dollars or whatever other way you would protect your gold, protecting your Bitcoin. If you don't have a lot of Bitcoin, that might be a big expense, a little overkill. But if you have serious Bitcoin, it's well worth it.
And remember too,
go ahead.
You might not have serious Bitcoin right now, but if you buy into the idea that Bitcoin will become global money,
sure,
you do the math, and your small amount of Bitcoin right now will
maybe large.
Yes, and you will want to have that sort of protection. So, I think it's worthy of the investment, because that $300 is not going. That's what it is going to cost. It's not going to cost you more in the future because Bitcoin goes up. That's right. a single one-time cost. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, totally. And I mean, I think a lot of people, they have at least one laptop, and so maybe they have to get another one. But you could also just borrow your friend's laptop, right? Just say, hey, back up your laptop so that I can erase it and use it for a couple days, and then restore it when it's over. So you could definitely do it cheaper. You don't have to buy all this stuff fresh. But hardware wallets are somewhere around $100, I think, and they don't offer anything close to this level of protection.
And so, is this live now? Could someone go on and do this right now?
Now.
Yeah. We're still working out little bugs here and there. But we do have a couple people that are already using it, that are going through the process and kind of helping us test it. So you may run into a bug and have to DM me. But I would say, I don't know, what do you think? Within how long before you don't expect anybody to run into any little bugs? Well,
0 bugs with at least a 95% success rate. I'd give it maybe 3 weeks to a month, and that'll be production tested and ready to go.
So where can someone get it?
You just go to yeticold.com, and then we walk you through. You could do this on your home laptop, just anything, and then follow the process, and it'll explain what you need, how to get it, how to set it up, and then walk you through on each of the laptops as you go.
So this is open source, right?
Yes. Yep.
Are you open to having people help with contributing to it or anything?
JW might have to answer that one.
Yeah, definitely. Actually, we already had the Bitcoin only guy. Gosh, what's his Twitter handle?
It's like 6102 or something.
Yeah. It's some reference to gold. Let's see, Bitcoin only. Well, if you go to bitcoinonly.com, that's his website, or maybe it's Bitcoin-only. Anyway, he did a version of the NATO format, like basically built just that as a little library so that other wallets can use it. And I think he's done a couple other little things too, with testing and stuff. So, but yeah, I mean, it's really important that anything that's even slightly security sensitive is open source, because you need other people to look at it and catch your mistakes. If it's closed source, and there are some hardware wallets out there that are closed source, it makes it a lot harder to have confidence that that they're, they don't have a bug, or they're not doing something amiss. So it is open source, and we would love any help. The main help that we can use right now is just testing. Just go out there and say, what the hell does it mean on this page when it says to do this? Because it'll help us realize, as people that, Will's pretty into Bitcoin and I'm pretty into Bitcoin. So it's easy for us to just assume that something's clear. So just normies going out and trying to use the product is probably the most help that we can have. I shouldn't say project, since it's free.
Right. Is there anything else that you want to talk about for this project that you think is worth people knowing about? Anything we didn't cover yet? I mean, you're the expert, Will. So let us know if there's any points that you think need or should be covered.
Yeah. I don't think there's much more to it at this point, since we haven't written any code for either Yeti Warm or Yeti Hot so far.
So, but Yeti Warm and Hot, they're really just a subset of Yeti Cold. So when you said maybe 3 or 4 weeks, does that estimate include the hot and warm versions?
That was just for 100% or 95% for Yeti Cold. Warm, recovery, and regular, same for Yeti Hot. I don't suspect will take that long either before it's good to go, because we already have all the code written for both of them. We just have to put it together.
So what do you think? Maybe 6 weeks and all that will be dialed into? Yeah. 6 weeks from now. Yeah.
Awesome.
The main thing that makes us excited about the Yeti Hot thing is that it's very, very simple. You just get a fresh laptop, you slap Ubuntu on it, you run through the steps to install Bitcoin Core. It'll, like I said, take less than 15 minutes to set up. And even though it's online, you are fully validating all of your Bitcoin, right? So if somebody sends you Bitcoin, like Rollo was saying, you know that you're getting genuine Bitcoin. You're not getting some knockoff or some scam coin. And that's the only way that you can do it. If you don't have a full node running and somebody sends you Bitcoin, it could be just your phone is telling you it's Bitcoin, but it's not really Bitcoin. What you really need is a full node to do that. So you'd have that, you'd have all of that assurance that you're getting real Bitcoin. And then as far as privacy goes, it's pretty good. All this stuff runs over Tor. So it's really not bad as far as privacy, like sending and receiving transactions. It's a whole lot better than any of the wallets that run on your phone or that, with the exception of Fully Noded, which is an awesome app that runs on your phone that you can connect to your full node. With the exception of Fully Noded, all the apps that I know of are compromising your privacy in some way, because like when you use your Trezor, this is something a lot of people don't realize. Your IP address at your house, right, that can be tied to your physical address is going to Trezor's servers in order to check your balance. Mm-hmm. So they know exactly how much Bitcoin you own, and they know if they want to, right? Like presumably these are good guys, yada, yada. We can trust everybody. Kumbaya. It's all good. I don't know where Trezor's based. It's like in Russia or something. I don't know. But yeah, I mean, presumably it's all fine. But when you're using a hardware wallet, any hardware wallet, that most people are using. They're using it because it's user friendly, because they're not comfortable setting up a full node, and they're a little worried that their laptop might have a virus on it. Both of those reasons to use a hardware wallet are bad, because the hardware wallet requires that your laptop be somewhat trustworthy. There's just another bug that was going around Twitter today on Trezors, where if the laptop is compromised, you can end up losing some Bitcoin with your Trezor. So you can't use a hardware wallet to protect you from your laptop, really. Maybe a little bit, but even then, it's questionable. And it definitely won't help you on the privacy side, because in order to find out what your balance is, it's got to go out to this centralized server that's run by Trezor or Ledger or whoever to tell you what that balance is. And if they want to, they can squirrel that information away. So for a cheap, get a refurbished laptop for like $80 or $70 off Newegg, throw the stuff on it. For less than $5,000, it's totally fine. It's a high degree of security. It's a high degree of privacy, and you're putting very little effort into it. So that's kind of the low bar. And what I'm hoping is that this project helps set that as the low bar, not phone wallets, not hardware wallets, but just a simple laptop that's a full node that does all the stuff, like a first class Bitcoin citizen sort of would want to have, and requires very little effort and very little time. And then from there, we have better options like Warm, and, ultimately, if you have real money, put it in Bitcoin or Yeti Cold.
Right. So, Will, you're a pretty young guy, and this is a pretty sizable undertaking. How's this been for you? Is it what you kind of expected? Have you done a lot of? I mean, obviously, this isn't your first project, but this is kind of the first time you're really kind of putting something out there to the masses to use.
Yeah. This is the first time that I have created a project start to finish that will be used by other people.
Nice.
Do you mind if we say your age?
No.
Yeah. So how old are you?
I'm 16.
16.
Nice.
Wow.
So what were all you listeners doing when you were 16?
I was going to say, when I was in high school, I was not doing this. So you must go to some elite private school that is teaching this stuff, and they must be very proud of you.
It's a public school, obviously.
So Will, now seriously, how have you been schooled, if you don't mind me asking?
I've been homeschooled my entire life. I recently got some programming education from my uncle, and he took a professional class on it. Other than that, I've just been taught by my uncle, and that's about it. Some online courses, but nothing fancy.
So how long have you been programming?
About 5 to 6 years.
Good for you. Nice. So you just kind of had a liking to it, got into it. I guess your dad's in the industry. You just kind of picked it up and went. Do you mind talking a little bit about that, how you got into it?
Yeah, in case someone else that's listening or someone who knows someone that's...
Or someone who has young kids who maybe in a couple years they'll be a little older and want to learn some stuff.
Yeah. I first got into it when we found an app that could easily code shapes on a screen, and that was really fun for me. I learned about animation and stuff from that, just from a simple app where you type a word and it throws something on the screen. I then from there learned more and more complicated stuff. From there I just basically learned the basics of programming, the bare minimum that could be used for any language. So now if you give me a language like Python, this is my first project with Python. From what I learned about how programming works in general, I'm able to put together a pretty good idea of any language. So this is my first project with Python. About 2 months ago, I didn't know anything about Python, but from what I knew, I could put together a Python app in under 2 months.
Once you understand the logic of the language and everything, you kind of figure it out.
Right. Yep.
Why did you decide to learn programming?
I liked it. I enjoyed it. And it's also pretty profitable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you were like 11.
Good choices.
Yeah.
You were like 11 when you started. Why? Do you remember what you were thinking when you were 11?
When I
That did speed
12.
you. 1 sec. Audio died.
Oh, you're okay. You're back.
Yeah, I hear you.
This is fun for me because it's like his idea, right? Like he recalls deciding that he was going to. It was not optional.
That's awesome.
Can you hear us?
Did we lose you, Will?
Well, we'll take this moment to talk about International Harvester, the latest sponsor of the Rollin' and Slappy Show. So be sure to check them out and buy a tractor or two.
Can you hear us, Will?
I
don't think you can hear us.
Yeah, let me text him and let him know that we can hear him.
Hey. I can hear you now, but I don't have my headphones, so the audio might sound a little weird.
Oh, did your headphones die? Your battery powered headphones?
Yeah. Yep. Should have had a backup pair or something.
That's all right. So I was laughing when you were off because you were saying that you decided to do it, but it wasn't really optional, right? You guys forced you to. All right. Let me.
All right, I can hear you.
Oh, okay. All right. So.
All right.
You sure you can hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Yep, I'm already good.
Okay. All right. So I was making fun of you because you said that you decided you wanted to program, but it wasn't really your choice, was it?
No. You did enjoy it. You did force me into learning it, but that was only for a couple of months, and then it was all me agreeing to it. I'm not sure what would have happened if I didn't agree to it. I do enjoy it, so we're good with that.
Right on.
Father knows best.
Yeah. One of the things that I like about programming is that if you program for 3 years, you can most likely get a job. It might not even have to be 3 years, maybe a year. But even while you're earning money with a job, you're constantly learning new things, making you more and more valuable. So basically, people are paying you to learn and build stuff for them.
Yeah, that's not a bad deal, is it?
No.
So, all right, now it's my time to embarrass you a little bit because I'm old enough where this is like kind of fun for me now. But yeah, it's funny how hearing some of the stories about how you got into programming and doing the stuff with your dad. Although not saying you did this, but working kind of with your dad here and throughout it, because growing like my dad played music on the side, and when my brothers and I were real little, he kind of same kind of thing. It wasn't really our choice. We were going to play an instrument, and we all kind of picked it up. And it wasn't only until a few years ago that I realized like how much it made my dad happy to like play with my brothers and I play music, especially when we're out in front of people, how proud he was of it. And I know that your dad, JW, is super proud of you, not just for this, but for everything. So he does say a lot of good things about you. And I know just from seeing my dad with the happiness he gets from doing something that, he works on for a lot of his life, to be able to pass that on and work with his son with it is pretty awesome. So.
Yeah, it is really fun. It's super cool that we've been able to work on this project together. And he's also like when I was a kid, like at Will's age, I didn't work with my dad, so I didn't really get to. I don't think he really got to see like me maturing, like kind of becoming more of a man and having to interact with me as a peer. But this project has been kind of that for us. Like it's been a little bit of a trip to like I'll get frustrated and he'll be the one that's mature, and that's super strange.
Yeah.
But very, very cool.
Yeah, I saw on Twitter he got to call you a boomer.
Yeah. Yeah, your little joke about how I'm the perfect tester there, Will.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I love it. So yeah, we're gonna have everything on the show notes page, Yeti.com, the GitHub page too. I did find that. And anything else we should have there? I'll put your Twitter, JW, there.
Cool. Yeah, I'm looking forward to getting Will on Twitter. There's still just too many freaks out there. Until he gets married, I'm going to try to shelter him a little bit.
Nice. Yeah, probably not the worst thing in the world.
Yeah.
But guys, thanks for coming on so much. This was really awesome.
Yeah, totally. It was fun. It was
great.
Yeah, good job, Will.
Thanks for joining us, Will.
Thanks. Yep.
And I'd say I wish you luck, but I don't think you need. I think you put the time in. I don't think you really need luck. I think you're going to be successful, and I think this is great. And I'm sure we'll be hearing a lot about what you do in the future. So, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we'll close off now, and when I hit stop, if you guys can hang on for a second after we're done recording. But again, the show notes page is mcflugel.com/171, where you can find links to the stuff we just talked about, as well as checking out libertymugs.com. And also, don't forget, if this piqued your interest about finally getting involved in Bitcoin, but you don't really know how to start or want more information about it, also you can check out 10hoursofbitcoin.com. It's a really well curated list of Bitcoin topics to get you going. It's another one of JW's projects, so check that out too. So thanks for listening, and we will catch you next week.
Peace.